Out here, the road never ends. It just keeps rolling under your wheels, mile after mile. I've spent years driving these highways, watching the sun rise in one state and set in another. Every trip has a story, some funny, some lonely, some that stick with you forever. So come on, climb in. Let's hit the road, and I'll tell you one. You know, people say you never forget your first trip. They're right. It's like your first time behind the wheel of freedom. Except freedom's got 18 wheels, and it growls like a hungry bear. I still remember that morning like it happened yesterday. The sky was just waking up, pale orange bleeding into the gray. I'd spent the night before in a cheap motel outside Kansas City, too wired to sleep. My mind kept replaying everything I'd learned. Double clutching, mirror checks, shifting smooth, logbooks, way stations. It all circled in my head like a broken record. The truck sat there in the lot, red Freightliner Columbia with just enough scratches to show it had been places. She wasn't mine, company truck, but when I climbed up into that cab, man, I felt like I'd stepped into a different world. The smell of diesel, the worn vinyl seat, the faint hum of the engine waiting to start. It all hit me at once. I sat for a while just holding the wheel, palms sweating, trying to breathe steady. You think you're ready after school and all that training, but nothing prepares you for that first solo haul. It's just you, the truck, and a whole lot of road. My dispatcher, name's Carl, called me right before I started rolling. Told me I was heading east with a load of frozen chicken bound for a distribution center in Pennsylvania. For states between me and that drop-off, about 1,200 miles total. Don't rush it, he said. Keep her between the lines and watch your hours. Then he hung up, like it was just another Tuesday. For him, maybe it was. For me, it felt like stepping off a cliff. The first turn of that key, you never forget that sound. The engine rumbled to life, coughing and shaking before settling into a low, steady growl. My mirrors were adjusted, the Qualcomm beeped alive, and that was it. I was officially rolling out on my first run. Leaving the city, the early morning traffic was thin, just a few other trucks, commuters, and the occasional police cruiser. The sun was climbing, reflecting off the chrome of passing rigs. I remember thinking, so this is it. I'm really doing it. Once I hit I-70, the nerves began to fade. The rhythm of the road has a way of calming you. The tires hum, the scenery drifts by, and before long you find yourself breathing easier. That's when I reached over, cranked up the radio, and found an old country station. George Strait singing about Amarillo by morning. I couldn't have asked for a better soundtrack. About 3 hours in, I stopped at a rest area, mostly to stretch my legs and check the load straps. The air smelled like cut grass and diesel. A couple other truckers were parked nearby, sitting on their steps, sipping coffee from travel mugs. They gave me a nod, that universal trucker nod, the one that says, "You're one of us now." I didn't talk to anyone that stopped. Didn't need to. I just leaned against the trailer, sipping from a can of cola, watching the road roll by. There was a freedom in it, knowing I was heading somewhere far away, just me and this machine. By afternoon, the sun was high and the air thick with summer heat. I'd made it halfway across Missouri, feeling good, when I hit my first real scare. A car had merged too quick in front of me near St. Louis. I slammed the brakes. The whole rig shuddered, and my heart jumped clean out of my chest. I missed that car by maybe 10 feet, maybe less. I remember gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. The car sped off like nothing happened, but I had to pull over at the next shoulder just to breathe. That's when I realized something important. No matter how big you are, out here you're still fragile. One mistake, yours or someone else's, and it's over. That lesson stuck. Still does. I made it to Illinois that evening, parked at a truck stop outside Effingham. The sky was painted with streaks of gold and purple, and the smell of grilled burgers drifted from the diner next door. I walked in, sat at the counter, ordered a plate of meatloaf and mashed potatoes. The waitress called everyone Han. The jukebox played Old Merle Haggard, and the floor squeaked under my boots. That night, I climbed into my sleeper for the first time. It was small, a little too warm, smelled faintly of dust and oil, but it was mine for the night. I remember lying there, the hum of idling engines all around, headlights sweeping past now and then. My mind was still spinning, but there was this quiet pride sitting under my ribs. I'd made it through day one. Before sleep took me, I looked up at the ceiling and whispered, "You're doing it, kid." And somewhere in that rhythm of highway noise and diesel engines, I believed it. Morning comes slow on the road. You don't wake up to alarms, not really. You wake up to the rumble of another truck firing up nearby, or the hiss of air brakes in the distance. That's your sunrise call. I sat up in my sleeper, rubbed my eyes, and for a second forgot where I was. Then I saw the dash light blinking faintly through the curtain, smelled the diesel in the air, and it all came back. I was still in Effingham, still on my first run, still chasing the horizon eastward. I fired up the truck, checked the gauges, and rolled out just as the first bit of orange crept over the trees. There's something about that early morning drive. Road still half asleep, mist hugging the fields, the sun bleeding through it all like gold. It's the kind of beauty you don't really see unless you're out here. I stopped at a pilot about an hour later for coffee and fuel. I was standing by the pump when an older driver parked next to me. Big guy, beard like snow, wearing a faded John Deere cap and suspenders that looked older than me. He gave me a look, then nodded at my truck. "Company ride?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, trying to sound casual. "First run." He grinned, this slow, knowing grin that said he'd seen 1,000 greenhorns before me. "You'll be fine," he said. "Just remember, it ain't a race. You get there when you get there." We chatted a bit while our tanks filled. His name was Randy, 30 years on the road, hauling flatbeds mostly. Told me stories about Wyoming snowstorms and Tennessee switchbacks. When I mentioned how close I'd come to a wreck near St. Louis, he chuckled and said, "Every rookie's got one of those. That's how the road breaks you in." Before he left, he slapped the side of my trailer and said, "Keep the shiny side up, brother." Then he rolled off, his taillights fading into the mist like some kind of ghost from the highway. Funny thing, I only talked to that man once, but I never forgot him. Sometimes you don't realize when a stranger hands you a bit of wisdom you'll carry forever. By mid-morning, I was rolling through Indiana. The land flattened out, cornfields stretching to forever, and the radio turned to static. That's when I switched it off. Silence can be heavy, but out there, it's different. You start hearing other things, the low growl of the engine, the steady thump of tires, the occasional whistle of wind sneaking through the seals. It's like the road hums a song only you can hear. Around noon, I pulled into a rest area and spotted a couple of other trucks I recognized from earlier stops. Same company colors, same logos. I parked next to them, figuring it couldn't hurt to introduce myself. The drivers were a husband and wife team, Mark and Luann. They'd been running together for years, hauling refrigerated freight like me. They invited me to eat lunch with them right there on the curb, sandwiches, chips, and some lemonade from a cooler they carried. We talked about routes, dispatchers, bad rest stops, and the little things that keep you sane out here. They told me to always keep a spare pair of gloves, never trust a truck stop burrito, and if I ever felt sleepy, pull over. No load's worth a life. It felt good, sitting there talking like that. I didn't realize until that moment how lonely the road could be, even after just a day. The cab can start feeling like a world of its own, and the silence, it creeps in if you let it. But talking to other drivers reminded me there's a quiet brotherhood out here. We're all rolling in different directions, but we're part of the same long, endless line of steel and rubber. After lunch, I said my goodbyes and hit the road again. The day stretched long and slow, the kind of drive where the horizon never seems to get any closer. By the time I reached Ohio, clouds were rolling in, thick and gray. Rain started tapping on the windshield, soft at first, then heavy. There's something oddly peaceful about driving through rain. The world outside blurs, trees, headlights, signs, all melting into streaks of color. I turned on my wipers, adjusted the speed, and just let the rhythm carry me. But the peace didn't last long. Somewhere near Columbus, traffic slowed to a crawl. A wreck up ahead. Two four-wheelers tangled bad on the shoulder. One of them flipped. I crept by in the right lane, lights flashing, state troopers directing cars. For a second, I caught sight of a man sitting on the guardrail, head in his hands, his car a mangled mess behind him. I felt a chill. You see things out here that stick with you. You learn how thin that line really is between control and chaos. When I finally cleared the jam, I kept driving in silence for a long while. No radio, no thoughts, just the hum of the tires on wet asphalt. I think every driver has moments like that, quiet reckonings with the road and what it asks of you. I made it to a truck stop near Zanesville just before dark. Parked, shut her down, and sat there for a while without moving. My shoulders ached, my eyes felt heavy, but my mind was alive. The rain had stopped, and everything outside glowed under the neon lights, puddles reflecting red and blue from the signs. Inside the diner, I sat at the counter again, same as the night before. Ordered coffee and pie this time. The waitress, young, tired eyes but kind smile, asked if I was out long. I told her it was my first week. She smiled and said, "Well, welcome to the road, sweetheart." When I went back to the truck, I climbed up slow, settled into the sleeper, and listened to the rain start again. It pattered against the roof soft as a lullaby. And right then, I realized something that stuck with me ever since. The road doesn't care if you're new or old, brave or scared. It just rolls on. But if you listen close enough, it teaches you things about patience, respect, and how small you really are against the miles. I drifted to sleep with that thought, and somewhere between the rhythm of the rain and the hum of distant engines, I stopped feeling like a rookie. I started feeling like a trucker. The next morning started gray. The rain had passed, but the sky still hung low and heavy, like a blanket that hadn't quite been lifted. I rolled out early, tires splashing through leftover puddles, the world still waking up. There's something about those early miles, quiet, thoughtful. The world hasn't put its noise on yet. By mid-morning, the flat farmlands of Ohio started to give way to hills, and I knew I was getting close to Pennsylvania. The signs changed, the road started to bend more, and before long I was winding through stretches of forest that seemed to go on forever. Now, you've probably never really felt weight until you've taken 40,000 pounds of freight up a mountain grade. The truck groans, your RPMs drop, and you start to feel every pound in that trailer tugging at you. I trained on hills before, sure, but this was the real thing. I hit the first real climb near the Alleghenies, engine straining as I dropped a gear. The CB crackled with chatter, other drivers warning about brake checks and fog near the summit. My palms were slick again, same as my first morning. The rain had left the road slick, and I could feel the trailer tugging just a little, like it wanted to slide backward. That's when I heard a voice come through the CB, deep, calm, and slow. "You in that red Freightliner? You're new, ain't ya?" I keyed the mic. "Yeah, first trip." There was a chuckle. "Figured. You're doing fine. Just keep her steady. Low gear, don't fight her. Let the engine pull. You'll make it." I couldn't see who it was, but just hearing that voice steadied me. I followed his advice, downshifted again, watched the RPMs climb, and kept a steady hand on the wheel. The truck climbed slow, engine growling deep, like an animal digging its claws into the mountain. At the summit, fog rolled in thick as smoke. Could barely see 50 feet ahead. My knuckles went white on the wheel, but I kept rolling, trusting the road markings and the rhythm. When the downgrade came, I flipped the Jake brake on and started down slow, 15 miles an hour, eyes flicking between mirrors and the road ahead. You never forget your first downgrade. It's not the speed that gets you, it's the weight behind you. Every second, gravity's whispering in your ear, telling you how easy it'd be to let go just a little too much. But you don't. You hold your nerve. You listen to the hum of the engine brake, the hiss of the air lines, the low growl of control. Halfway down, the fog broke open and the valley spread out below me. Trees glowing orange and green, the highway winding like a ribbon through the hills. I let out a long breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. That's when the CB cracked again. "See? Told ya. Not so bad once you learn to trust her." I smiled, even though the guy couldn't see it. "Appreciate it," I said. "Anytime, rookie," he replied. "We all been there." That line stuck with me. We all been there. Out here, every driver's fought their own mountains, literal or not. I stopped at a scenic turnout near the bottom just to take it all in. The air smelled of pine and rain, cool and clean. I stepped out and looked down the valley, trucks like tiny toys crawling along the road below. For the first time that trip, I felt something close to peace. Not excitement, not nerves, just quiet pride. I kept rolling through the afternoon, passing little mountain towns, signs for diners, bait shops, and old motels with half their neon burned out. Somewhere near Bedford, I pulled off to fuel up again and met another driver who reminded me of my dad. Name was Larry. Short, gray hair, wore an old Navy jacket and a patch that said Vietnam Vet. He asked how long I'd been out. I told him it was my first trip. He just smiled and said, "You look like it, but you're holding yourself right. That means you'll make it." We talked for a while, about the old days when trucks didn't have automatic transmissions, when you had to muscle them up hills. He said back then, a trucker's map was his memory and a folded atlas under the seat. Now it's all GPS and gadgets, he said, but the road's still the same. She don't care how fancy your dash is. You treat her right, she'll treat you right. Before he left, he handed me something, an old silver coin with an eagle on it. Said it was his good luck piece when he first started driving. "I've been carrying it 30 years, he said. "Now it's your turn. Pass it on someday." I still have that coin. It rides in the little tray next to my shifter, catches the sunlight sometimes. That evening, I rolled into my delivery point, a big warehouse near Harrisburg. The place was a maze of trucks, forklifts buzzing around like angry bees. I backed into the dock slow, careful. Took me 3 tries to get it perfect. But when that trailer thumped against the dock plate and the green light flashed, I felt like I'd just won something big. Unloading took a couple of hours. I sat in the cab, windows down, watching the sunset spill orange light across the asphalt. For the first time, I didn't feel like a visitor out here. I felt like I belonged, part of this strange, endless rhythm of wheels, diesel, and miles. When the paperwork was signed and I was free to go, I parked at a nearby lot, grabbed a sandwich from my cooler, and sat on the step of my cab. The air was cool, and the sky had that deep indigo you only see between sunset and night. A few other trucks idled nearby, their lights flickering faintly in the dark. I thought about everything, the close calls, the fog, the strangers who helped me without ever needing to know my name. I realized that's what the road is, really, 1,000 small kindnesses rolling past each other in the night. Before I climbed into sleep, I looked at that coin again and said quietly, "Guess I'm one of you now." And in that moment, I knew I wasn't just delivering freight anymore. I was carrying stories, mine and everyone else's who'd ever rolled these same miles before me. The thing about trucking that nobody tells you at first is this: delivering the load isn't the end of the trip, it's only halfway. When I rolled out of that warehouse yard in Harrisburg, the sky had gone black and still. I'd made my drop, got the signature, turned in the paperwork. My trailer was empty now, lighter but still humming with the rhythm of the road. The dispatcher sent a message through the Qualcomm: deadhead west to pick up in Dayton. Reload in the morning. I looked at the screen for a while, sighed, then fired up the engine again. I wasn't even tired, not yet. Just running on that weird mix of adrenaline and exhaustion that only happens out here. So I decided to drive through the night a while, take my time, see how it felt. Once you've been on the road a few days, something changes inside you. The world starts to shrink down to what's inside your windshield. 2 white lines, a hum beneath your seat, and the faint glow of the dash lights painting your hands blue. Everything else just falls away. I remember that first night drive so clearly. I was rolling west on I-70, the road mostly empty except for a few rigs spaced out miles apart. The sky was clean and full of stars, and every so often a shooting one would streak past the horizon. I turned the radio down low, Old Blue Station out of somewhere in West Virginia, and just drove. It's hard to explain that kind of peace to someone who's never felt it. There's loneliness, sure, but there's also this strange comfort in knowing it's just you and the miles. No noise, no interruptions, just movement. It's like meditation, only louder. Around midnight, I pulled into a small rest area near Wheeling. The place was nearly empty, 2 trucks idling, a car or 2 tucked in the back. I parked, stepped out, and stretched. The air was cool and smelled of pine and wet asphalt. Somewhere in the distance, a train horn echoed. There was an older fella sitting at one of the picnic tables, smoking a cigarette. He nodded as I passed. I asked if he'd been driving long. He chuckled. Since Carter was president. We talked for maybe 20 minutes. Nothing deep, just truck talk. Tires, loads, dispatch headaches. But near the end, he said something that stuck with me. You'll learn quick that the road ain't about where you're going. It's about who you become getting there. At the time, I didn't fully understand what he meant, but those words circled around in my head the whole next day. By morning, I made it to Dayton, bleary-eyed and running on caffeine. Picked up a new load, paper rolls bound for a warehouse in Oklahoma City. Heavier than my last one, and the route meant another long haul across the Midwest. But I didn't mind. I was starting to like the road, the routine of it, the rhythm. As I pulled back onto the interstate, I caught my reflection in the side mirror. My eyes looked tired, but my hands were steady. I grinned a little. I was starting to look like one of them, the real drivers. The next couple of days blurred into one long stretch of miles. Truck stops, way stations, bad coffee, good conversations. Each night, I'd park somewhere different. A Love's in Indiana, a lonely rest area in Illinois, a small-town diner lot in Missouri. Each place had its own rhythm, its own ghosts. One night, in a place just outside St. Clair, I ended up parked next to Mark and Luann again, the husband and wife team I'd met earlier in the trip. They recognized my truck and waved me over for dinner. We sat in the diner booth, 3 plates of fried chicken between us, talking like old friends. Luann asked how my first trip was going. I told her about the mountain, the fog, the old vet who gave me the coin. She smiled and said, "See, the road gives you teachers when you need them." We talked about everything: home, families, what it's like to live between places. They told me they'd been on the road together 15 years. "Our truck's our house," Mark said. "Everything else is just scenery." Before we left, they handed me a small Polaroid they'd taken years ago, the 2 of them standing in front of their first rig, grinning like kids. On the back, Luann had written, "Keep rolling. It gets easier." That picture's still tucked behind my sun visor. The next day brought heat. Thick, suffocating summer heat that made the cab feel like an oven. The AC was trying its best, but the sun was relentless. Somewhere near Joplin, I started to feel that bone-deep tiredness set in. You know the kind, when your eyelids get heavy and your mind starts to wander. I remembered what Mark told me, no load's worth your life. So I pulled off at the next rest area, killed the engine, and climbed into the sleeper for a nap. When I woke, it was dusk. The air had cooled, the world tinted in gold and purple. I sat on my step, sipping lukewarm coffee from my thermos, watching trucks roll by one. Every set of headlights told a story, someone heading somewhere, carrying something important to someone else. It hit me then how small my world used to be before all this. Work, apartment, the same streets every day. Now, every sunrise came from a different horizon. Every night brought a new skyline. But it wasn't just geography that changed. It was me. The nervous kid who'd white-knuckled the wheel through St. Louis was gone. In his place was someone who'd seen foggy mountain passes, midnight stars, and the quiet humanity of truck stops at dawn. Later that night, somewhere near Tulsa, the CB crackled again, that same deep voice from the mountain. That red Freightliner still holding steady. I grinned. Still rolling, I said. Good, he replied. Then you're doing just fine. And just like that, the channel went quiet again. Funny thing, I never did find out who that driver was. But in a way, I think that's how it's supposed to be. Out here, help comes and goes like mile markers. You don't always need a name to remember the kindness. When I finally rolled into Oklahoma City 2 mornings later, sun coming up over the plains, I felt something I hadn't expected, a little sadness. Because I knew this trip, my first one, was almost over. But as I pulled into that final dock, backed and smooth, and heard that dock plate slam into place, I realized something else, too. I wasn't the same man who'd left Kansas City a week ago. I made my last delivery just after sunrise. The warehouse lot was nearly empty, still soaked in that early morning calm before the forklifts start buzzing. The air was cool and smelled faintly of rain and asphalt. I backed into the dock like I'd done it 1,000 times. No nerves, no fumbling. Just steady, practiced movements. Funny how quick you grow into things. While I waited for them to unload, I brewed a cup of coffee in the cab and leaned back in my seat. The dashboard lights glowed soft orange, the engine idling low, steady as a heartbeat. I thought about everything that had happened. The close calls, the fog, the faces, the voices that guided me along the way. It all felt like a lifetime packed into a single week. When the green light finally blinked, I signed the paperwork, unhooked, and eased the truck out onto the street. The dispatcher pinged me again, head home empty. Good work, rookie. 2 words, but they hit harder than I expected. Good work. The road west stretched ahead like an old friend, and I realized how different it looked now. Same asphalt, same signs, but I saw it differently. The miles no longer felt like obstacles between places. They felt like stories, like moments waiting to happen. I kept the radio low, just static and soft country tunes drifting through the speakers. The morning sun was blinding, but warm, spilling over everything in gold. I rolled the window down, let the wind rush in, and laughed a little, a real, unguarded laugh. I'd made it, but, it wasn't the making it that mattered most. It was learning that I could. Around midday, I stopped at a diner off the highway, some little place I'd passed a few times before but never gone into. Maggie's Roadside Cafe. You could tell it had been there for decades. Old neon sign buzzing, gravel lot full of rigs, the smell of bacon and burnt coffee drifting out the door. Inside, the floor creaked, and every booth was filled with drivers swapping stories. A waitress with a ponytail and a tired smile asked where I was headed. Home, I told her. She nodded, like she understood that word meant something different out here. I ordered a stack of pancakes and just sat there, watching sunlight spill across chrome bumpers outside. A couple of drivers were joking at the counter about dispatchers and late loads. It hit me then that I was part of that world now, not watching it, not dreaming about it, but in it. Before I left a little extra tip on the counter and said, "Thanks, Maggie." She smiled and said, "Safe miles, sweetheart." That phrase, safe miles, it's simple, but it carries weight out here. It's like a prayer between drivers, a quiet wish for the next sunrise. I rolled back onto the highway, full stomach and a calm mind. The world stretched out ahead in long waves of asphalt and sunlight. Somewhere along the way, I turned off the GPS. I didn't need it. I knew where I was going. The road west through Oklahoma and Kansas felt endless, but in that peaceful kind of way. I stopped when I felt like it, ate when I was hungry, and just listened to the hum of the engine, to the wind through the vents, to my own thoughts catching up with me. You spend enough time out here, and the cab starts to feel less like a machine and more like a companion. Every rattle, every hum becomes familiar. You talk to it sometimes, without even realizing. I caught myself doing that on the way home, patting the dash, saying, "Almost there, girl," like she could hear me. The last night of that trip, I parked at a rest stop just a few hours from home. Didn't need to, really. I could have pushed through, but something told me to stop. The air was cool, sky full of stars, the kind you only see away from the city lights. I climbed down, leaned against the trailer, and just listened. The sound of crickets, the low rumble of trucks idling, the faint rustle of wind in the trees. For the first time since I'd started driving, I didn't feel the need to go anywhere. I was exactly where I needed to be. I pulled out that silver coin the old vet had given me, held it up to the moonlight. The eagle on it glinted faintly, worn from years of pocket rides. I thought about all the hands that coin had passed through, men and women who'd lived a life on these roads before me. That's when I realized, this job, this life, it's a kind of inheritance. Every driver out here carries pieces of those who came before. The stories, the lessons, the quiet kindnesses at 2 a.m. In truck stop diners, they get passed down, mile after mile. When I finally rolled home the next morning, the sun was already high. I parked the rig in the company lot, turned off the key, and sat there for a long moment. The sudden silence after all those miles felt almost strange, like stepping off a moving train. I climbed down, stretched, and took one last look at the truck. She was dirty, bug splattered, but she'd done her job. We both had. Carl, my dispatcher, came out of the office, gave me a nod. "Heard you did good," he said. "Yeah," I replied. "Didn't wreck, didn't quit. Guess that's something." He laughed. "That's everything." Later that afternoon, I sat on my apartment balcony with a cold drink, watching cars drift by on the highway in the distance. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel restless. The road was still calling, sure, it always would, but now I knew what that call really meant. It wasn't about running from something. It was about finding something, peace, maybe, or purpose. People think trucking's about freight. It's not. It's about time, long, quiet stretches where you meet yourself again and again until you start to understand who you really are. That first trip taught me a lot. How to downshift on a mountain, how to read the weather by smell, how to find calm in the chaos of traffic. But mostly it taught me this. The road doesn't give you answers. It gives you space, space to listen, to breathe, to grow. And when the miles finally start to feel like home, that's when you know you're no longer just driving. You're belonging. Now, when I look at the road, I no longer see just a road. I see a part of myself, a young, scared, but stubborn guy who believed for the first time that he could do it. And perhaps that is the true meaning of the road. Not where it leads, but who it makes you. That's where my story ends tonight. If you'd like to hear more from the road, hit subscribe and rest easy, my friend.